Welcome back to Reddit from Reddit. Today we're taking a look at the AskReddit. There's a well-known saying that goes, always give the hardest job to the laziest person because they will find the easiest way to do it. What is the best real-life example to this you have seen? I once was a temp at a tiny office on a construction site in around 2003. I was only there for one day while the regular person was on some training. They sat me down and told me that I just needed to copy all these numbers from one program to another. So I selected them, hit Control-C and Control-V. They stared at me. Turns out about 60% of this woman's time had been spent manually typing numbers from one place to another. Had a manager that would manually delete every email from his work inbox. I'll never forget the look he gave me when I clicked the Select All button that was clearly visible the entire time. There are way too many people who think computers are just typewriters with a bunch of weird extra stuff on them. There was an overworked lady who worked at my company who could hit Shift to copy multiple lines of Excel at once. She saw me do it once and said,
"Wait, how did you do that?
"Do what?"
Copy multiple lines at once."
"You just click the first line, hit Shift, then click the last line." "Why? How have you been doing it?" Lady, who looks at me in disbelief.
"I've been copying it line by line. It takes me hours to do it every week."
I took the next few hours to show her a bunch of features in Excel and computers in general. I think I saved her 20 hours per week that day. Similar story. At an office I visited recently, one staffer's job required making copies of files and making a few tweaks to the copy. To do this, she'd open each file, copy and paste its contents into a new one, reapply the rather complex headers and footers, and save. Dozens of times a day. I showed her how to Control-C, Control-V from the folder itself. She cried. I work in finance at a large multinational corporation. I feel like a big part of our job is to just stop doing things and wait to see who complains. If someone complains, we keep doing it. If silence, then we call it a controlled drop and put it on our performance review for creating efficiencies. Years ago, I was completing a daily report that was saved on the shared drive that 4 different people needed. I skipped it 1 week and no one said anything. Ditto on the second week. Finally, I put a message on the report that said, "If you need this report, please contact the Blue Witch," and I never touched the report again. We were recently cleaning out the shared drive and I found that report. 2013 was the last time I input anything. We do this screen test. If something sounds useless, looks useless, and smells useless, we reversibly disconnect, hide, or disable it. If someone rarely screams, we restore it. Nothing required for safety or compliance, and everything is backed up to an offline disk. Servers have been turned off instead of replaced. They'll sit for a while, then get melted down. I'm sure the big guys do the same thing with entire racks or even data centers. I work in a CNC shop. There would be a pile of jobs that needed to be done for the month. Some took days to run, while others were generally quick. The record for jobs done in one day was 8. What I did was look through all the jobs and organize them by setup. Meaning, every job has a setup time. It can take an hour to get all of the tooling together, setting up the cutting table, and setting the part squared to the table so the machine can gauge where the part is, so when I insert the code into the machine, it can run flawlessly and drill, mill, tap, whatever within a literally hair measurement for every single job. Majority of parts use standard tooling, and I have an automatic tool changing with 20 pockets. Long story short, I figured out how to line up the jobs so that they all have the same setup. Blew the record out of the water with 30 jobs done in one day, saving the company tens of thousands in work hours, all because I didn't feel like doing all the setups that day. There's actually a field of study about optimizing work setup efficiently. That company could probably use an industrial engineer. Boss hated Excel to the point where he didn't want us using formulas because you can't trust them to be right. So we needed to do all the calculations by hand or on a calculator. He would give me a spreadsheet once or twice a week that required, let's say, 45 seconds to do, but maybe 7 hours by hand, and he told me to go to Starbucks or something and crank it out. He thought that since I pasted his values and he couldn't see the formulas, that I did it by hand, when really, I just did it in 45 seconds, sent an email on delay for 7 hours, and studied for the next semester. Dude was the poster boy for failing upwards in your career. First day of internship, he told me with a straight face he was a work harder, not smarter kind of guy. Go to Starbucks or something and crank it out. I was going to say how pissed I'd be, but if he let you actually leave, I would just enjoy my free day off. He didn't want us using formulas because you can't trust them to be right. Do all the calculations by hand or on a calculator. This is the most asinine thing I've read today. Did you work for Dunder Mifflin or something? I worked a summer at a mortgage company as an assistant to the underwriters. My only job was printing documents and then hole punching them to put in folders. They had a super fancy Xerox printer that basically did my entire job for me, but the underwriters at this company didn't know how to click through printer settings to make the machine hole punch as it was being printed. I showed them how to do it, and they resisted it super hard. Like they didn't trust it? I don't know. So I got to keep my job, but what was supposed to take me all day literally took me about 20 to 30 minutes first thing in the morning. So they started assigning me real tasks and even offered to keep me on to eventually become an underwriter too, because I was so sharp. That is, I knew how to use the very expensive printer they already had. I was just about to start grad school, so I had to politely decline, but I'm pretty sure they didn't hire someone to replace me when I left. TLDR, they had a printer that already did my job for me, but didn't know how to use it. I showed them. I have a coworker who did some temp work after college. One of her jobs was at some sort of small bank or financial institution, and her whole job was to keep this huge day planner of everyone's meetings and run around reminding people when their meetings were. She tried showing them that they could just use Google Calendars, but they just wouldn't do it for some reason. This happened in 2019. This is like the third or fourth one I read that was, they had this manual talk that took all day, but they also had a printer that did it automatically that no one knew how to use. My guess is that the printers were only designed by engineers, feature-packed and completely unusable by the people that it was designed for. Maybe not the most impressive story here, but I thought it was a great sidestep of effort nonetheless. A coworker of mine had to get rid of a smaller junk fiberglass boat with no trailer. Our other coworkers are telling him how much time and money he's going to need to spend to get rid of it, and he's just saying, "Oh, is that so?" He took off one day and sat down on his lawn with a cooler of beer. That day was garbage day. Inevitably, the trash guys roll up. He hands each of them a cold beer and says, "Hey boys, got $50 for each of you if you can help me out real quick." They fed the entire 12-foot boat into the packer, crushing it 2 feet at a time. Growing up, we didn't have large stuff pickup, mattresses, old appliances, that sort of thing. So anytime my dad needed something gone like that, he'd set it by the trash can, and on trash day, he'd have me put a 6-pack on the pile while I waited for the school bus. As the trash ran within minutes of the bus, it never failed. Whatever was piled up was gone. I used to process HSA claims around 10 plus years ago. One system we had to use back then was an old as hell terminal program that took 4 line items per page. That's it. For a usual claim, no big deal. Not too hard to keep track of things over 2 or 3 pages for a longer claim. Most fit on one. However, we had the dreaded shoebox claims. This was the person who saved up every receipt all year in a metaphorical shoebox and sent everything in, once a year, to empty their account. We hated them. Dozens or hundreds of line items totaling thousands of dollars. Just because you only have $500 in your HSA doesn't mean we get to stop there. If you sent in $4,000 in receipts, I gotta account for it all. Totally killed your numbers for the day, and they tracked claims per hour religiously. The main issue was double checking that everything added up right when you were done entering it. At 4 items a page, it took forever to tally. So I made an Excel sheet. It was laid out so I could enter every single line, then run a macro that would calculate the needed totals and dump all the text to a text file formatted exactly so I could select 4 items at a time and paste them directly into the terminal window from the default starting cursor position, and every field would fill in automatically. Copy paste next, copy paste next, copy paste next, etc., etc. It easily halved my entry times with way less work. Finding any typos was much easier. I just had to look at one column organized sheet instead of scrolling through God knows how many of pages of terminal text. It was great. I showed it to my manager so the rest of the team could use it. She was horrified that I was used something like that, as no human was double checking as they went along. This despite demonstrable improvements to my error rates on large claims after I started using it. She ordered me to stop using it and forbid anyone in her team from automating any part of their job at all. I kept using it for all of the 2 months I stayed there after that. I had some of the highest claim per hour numbers and lowest error rates on her team. I never developed any more tools for them. Screw her. You created a threat to her job, not a tool to save time. At least that's how a lot of people see it. I've had at least a dozen people react the same way across firms over the years. The latest one was last week. However, her reason was creativity over productivity. She believes computers can't do her job. I used to have to make 2 contracts for every person I brought on a traveling training team. I said 2 contracts was stupid and made them into 1, sent it to our lawyers, and they approved it. Still took me too goddamn long to update each contract with different names, pay rates, and dates. Went on our Excel and found out how to make a mailer list, and hours of work takes me 10 minutes. I didn't tell anyone this though, so I just take my time. Then I had to make floor maps for restaurants to send to the company that puts them into our scheduling program. Well, all of our restaurants are cookie cutter, so I just use Paint to piece them together rather than make all of them each time. I'm a freaking Picasso with Microsoft Paint. Then they wanted me to use Excel to keep track of training teams. One of my coworkers used Smartsheet and loves to teach people things. So I jump on Smartsheet with her and she shows me around. Way easier publishing it so that the people can see the teams but not mess up any info. Using forms to not have to ask them 30 questions that auto-populate my Smartsheet, sharing it with payroll so that they never have to reach out to me, templates on Outlook, tons of stuff. I basically took a lot off my job. Said screw that, there has to be an easier way. Asked on Reddit or just Google things and spend maybe an hour learning something that will save me many hours in the future. I always tell people to just Google things. They say, I don't know what to Google. And I say, whatever your problem is, just Google it the exact same way you'd say it to me. Then when they Google Excel thing that makes this do that, they're shocked that they find the answer. Worked as a cashier during the holiday season back when I was 16. The supermarket was selling drinks by the boxes, and at that time, we only had barcode scanners that was at the front of the computer. No gun-type scanners existed. I was lazy and didn't want to carry boxes up to the scanner, so I politely asked my customers if I could carve out the barcode from their box to scan and keep. Some agreed, some didn't want to, but eventually I managed to amass all the barcodes needed, labeled them, and kept them in a file for easy reference. Apparently, some other cashier got green-eyed at my smart move and complained to the chief cashier, who promptly lectured me on how it's dangerous for me to scan such barcodes as I might scan the wrong things. She told me to throw it all away and carry the boxes like I was meant to. I mean, I was young, so I could, but the other cashiers were older and some were elderly and needed the customers themselves to help carry the boxes to the scanner. But whatever, I guess jealousy trumps common sense. Tons of stores do that just with the printed out sheet. You could have taken pictures of all the barcodes and made a beautifully labeled collage. Dang, that was brilliant on your part. And many stores used to do an official barcode book, so I don't see the problem with the idea of it. They should have asked you to create more, not toss yours. They probably could have been photocopied off your original set. I work in a semi-warehouse environment, and we have to track where items are at all times. When we move X item from location A to location B, we had to type out the to and from locations. We do this hundreds of times a shift. I went online to a free barcode maker website and spent about 20 minutes making location barcodes. I save hours a day by scanning barcodes. I did something like that when I worked at a movie rental store. The computers made you sign back in after something like 15 seconds of inactivity. It was so unproductive. After a week or two at the job, I bought some stickers and printed barcodes onto the back of my ID badge. One barcode had my ID, the other had my password. I could scan them both in a second or two. I avoided telling my boss because I didn't want to get in trouble, but eventually he found out, and when he did, he had me print barcodes for everyone. Just thinking about that computer system makes me mad, and it's been over a decade. That's how you keep your warehouse from becoming a warehouse. And that's the end of this AskReddit. There's a well-known saying that goes, always give the hardest job to the laziest person because they will find the easiest way to do it. What's the best real-life example to this you have seen? Do you have any examples that we missed that you want to include down below in the comments? Let us know. And while you're down there, don't forget to hit the like button and get subscribed to Reddit from Reddit to stay up to date on all of our best Reddit stories. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.